But in more important news, there's some going down, and you're doing some content on all different types of things on your podcast. I like you keeping up with all the current events too. You get on that right away.
Yes.
But this USAID thing.
Oh, yeah.
Or as some people call it, USAID.
Yes, people have been pissed about this.
Yeah.
People have been correcting me.
I called it the other day that on a podcast. I'm like, is that what we're supposed to fucking call it? Isn't it just USAID? Or are people so upset about AIDS we can't say that?
Yeah, literally. This is the weird sort of thing with it, is that they call it, if you look at the logo, it's USAID.
Right.
Blue and red. And I'm pretty sure people called it USAID for a while. But now they're calling it USAID because they're like, whoa, this was never about aid. This was never about aid. This was about the Agency for International Development.
Yes.
And you're like, okay.
We have to respect that gender.
Yeah, and it's like, well, hold on. Why is it? But like the logo says USA. That's what it says. And they're like, no. But like, yeah, it's not meant to literally be aid, but they're making the logo in such a way to imply that. You know what I mean? Like Doge is not literally about the cryptocurrency, but it's done in such a way as to, wink at the meme.
Memeify it.
You know what I mean? Like,
right.
So it's both. And, but yeah, USAID is a fascinating thing, dude. I just love the boys at Langley just getting creative.
I know, man.
Like at a certain point, like there's two parts of this, right? The isolationist in me is like, you know what? Maybe we don't need to be the police of the world. Maybe we don't need to be sending all the soft power all over and funding all this stuff that seems superfluous. Let's just focus on putting the money to the American people. You know what I mean? Focus on helping the fires in LA and helping the podcasters in New York. Like let's focus on what matters, right? Giving the money to the people that need it. And then there's the other part of me, you know what I mean? Like the insidious, Machiavellian side that's like, no.
We need to run the world.
We need to run the whole world, okay? Yeah. Or else China's going to do it.
Condoms for Gaza.
Yes, we need more condoms. The condoms for Gaza thing is hilarious, dude.
Yeah, isn't that bullshit?
Yeah, that's what I had read, okay? And for the record...
Where'd you read it?
I wrote it down. And for the record, I'm not a geopolitical analyst, okay? I'm a comedian.
You are today.
I'm a comedian. I'm a comedian with a Twitter account, okay? Go look at Mike Benz. He's got all the research figured out. But
this Mike Mercedes-Benz guy's everywhere. He's everywhere.
It's a fabulous last name, Mercedes-Benz. I mean, it's amazing.
It feels a little too good to be true.
Anyway. Benzy. Yeah. But no, he's doing great research on it. But I don't know anything. So I've just kind of read the stuff. But apparently the Condoms for Gaza thing was like a certain amount of money is allocated for like reproductive health in the region. And then a small subset of that under a subset was for contraception, things like IUDs and
so they bought a couple packets of fucking, CVS and sent it there.
They dropped the Magnum in there. You guys share it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. No one in Gaza's pulling out. That's what they said. They're like, no one's pulling out. All right? The citizens, the government, no one. But yeah, apparently I've even read, and maybe we fact check this, Alessi, I don't know, but like apparently some of the money was allocated for Gaza, which is a city in Mozambique. And that is...
Oh, so they had a mix-up with what the context was.
Either an intentional mix-up in order to skew sort of the narrative, or a good faith mix-up, a mistake.
Can you explain for people out there, like you're explaining to a fifth grader, what the concept of USAID is, though? Like, it's exactly what it sounds like, but you mentioned, for example, it could be used as soft power for the CIA, but like, what does that mean for people that aren't following?
World War II ends, the Cold War basically begins, and there's all these sort of like precursors to USAID, and basically it's like, okay, we can't just go in and like colonize countries anymore. We can't, like, imperialism is done. All right, we're cutting up Africa, we're giving India back, like all this stuff. We're just, all right, we're done with it. And so America's like, okay, how can we still exert power and stop communism, either quotes or not quotes, depending on which side of the aisle you're on. And let's stop the influence of all these other foreign powers from going to these countries. And now they're doing, like a hot war or some type of soft power work. And again, soft power is basically the use of like diplomacy, social coercion, potentially propaganda to basically exert the will of your country into other countries. Example of this is like China's Belt and Road Initiative, which has been obviously discussed, over the last like 15 years, which is basically like, funding infrastructure projects in like East African countries in order to get UN votes, to get access to mines, to get access to ports.
That they can't pay back, too.
Precisely,
They're giving them loans they can't pay back.
So you basically say like, hey, we're going to build this thing. And they go, okay, great. How much does it cost? You say, it costs this much. And they say, okay, great. And then they can't pay back. And they go, you know what?
We own you now.
Don't even worry about it. You can default on a loan. But what about that mine you got? You got some cobalt or something. We got to make an iPhone or 6. Let's just, ship it over to the kids and they'll make them.
We reckon to save labor.
Exactly. So that's basically what it is. And so that's kind of like the example there. And obviously America's doing a version of this with USAID is what it seems like. And so after the Cold War, or as the Cold War is heating up, I'm pretty sure it was Kennedy in like 61 that creates this thing called USAID. And it's a way to basically fund countries around the world and just basically give, rice, mosquito nets for malaria and things like that to help the disenfranchised. It's also, as time progressed, helping like art projects and helping local communities to like develop cultures, and be able to become perhaps more Western is a way to look at it. And that's kind of how it was on its face. And then, people even pointed out like stuff back in the day, like Guatemala syphilis experiments, apparently that happened in Guatemala. You can pull this up.
Yeah, let's pull that up.
I'm pretty sure this happened with the precursor to USAID, if I'm not mistaken. It was basically like a similar organization that then...
Like the OSS to the CIA.
Type shit.
Yeah.
KGB, FSB. It's just like a thing, and it's basically the same thing, and then they do a rebrand, and you're like, all right. And... yeah, you're like, okay.
It's like the Don Draper meme. USAID.
Yeah, basically. It's like, all right, I guess it's Max now. You know what I mean? No one knows what to call this HBO service. But yeah, so basically, the precursor was doing like these syphilis experiments in Guatemala, where they were like basically doing the same thing that they were doing in Tuskegee in Alabama. And giving people syphilis, maybe knowingly, unknowingly.
Definitely knowingly.
People getting untreated syphilis for prolonged periods of time. And just kind of seeing... what's going on. So there's
Guatemala syphilis experiments, the CIA Wikipedia. Let's see what they have to say about it.
Yeah.
All right, so the Guatemala syphilis experiments were United States-led human experiments conducted in Guatemala from 46 to 48. The experiments were led by physician John Charles Cutler, sounds like a real straight shooter, who also participated in the late stages of the Tuskegee syphilis experiment. Oh, so he was a veteran.
Yeah, he's got experience.
And doctors infected 1,300 people, including at least 600 soldiers and people from various impoverished groups, including but not limited to sex workers, orphans, inmates of mental hospitals, and prisoners with syphilis, gonorrhea, and cancroid. Without the informed consent of the subjects, only 700 of them received treatment. In total, 5,500 people were involved in research experiments, of whom 83 died by the end of 1953, though it is unknown whether the injections were... I wonder what was responsible. Serology studies continued until 1953, involving the same vulnerable populations, in addition to children from state-run schools, an orphanage, and rural towns. However, the intentional infections of patients ended with the original study. On October 1st, 2010, the U.S. President, Secretary of State, and Secretary of Health of Human Services formally apologized to Guatemala for the ethical violations. Guatemala condemned the experiment as a crime against humanity. Multiple unsuccessful lawsuits have since been filed in the U.S.
Yeah, so if anyone's listening, obviously don't worry, because we said sorry.
Right.
And so yeah, I guess we're good.
Yeah, it's over now.
But that was from an organization that people allege was basically the precursor to USAID. And then with the USAID stuff, obviously earlier in the time, there was like, okay, we're going to give rice to farmers in Haiti. And then it created a huge agricultural issue where then they were not able to farm their own rice. They kind of like monocropped, and then they became dependent on the U.S. government for rice and stuff like that. So people point out like, okay, there's good stuff happening though also. Like if you look up like the benefits of USAID, it's like, it seems like, millions of people got access to mosquito nets. There's people that have been fed all over the world from these projects. Like, this is amazing. There's obviously good things that have been done with the budget.
But that's not what people want to talk about.
Obviously not. Because it seems like as Elon and Doge is like kind of pointing out, it's like, there's been a ton of stuff that's basically, acting as in maybe more nefarious means. So like some of the other things are like, money laundering is a big part of it that people are pointing out. That like both foreign nationals and diplomats and heads of state in other countries are kind of skimming a little piece here and there. U.S. politicians and Congress people, maybe they broker the deal and they're able to allocate aid and maybe they get a little kickback. And then a big part of it is obviously the soft power side, which is, hey, let's build up these countries, give them some money, curry favor with the governments over there, and then maybe even put like some assets, put some cover guys that kind of go out. And they help, sort of facilitate some of the aid, but they're also on the ground, meeting people, learning.
Meaning it's a vehicle to get access.
Perhaps. Again, none of this has necessarily been proven. I'm not an expert on the topic, but that's how it seems to me.
Now, some of the things and some of the headlines, which I got to do all the research on, because like you said, we got to figure out what's real and what's not. There's things that are misreported. But there's certainly stuff we see in there that is not only sketchy, it's straight up corrupt. It's using soft power in ways that a lot of us would deem completely unnecessary and perhaps power hungry. But the interesting question you and I were actually talking about off camera before we started is the difficult, catch-22 here, which is that do you have some situations, not all of them, but certainly not Guatemala syphilis experiments, but do you have other situations where you are faced with the option of doing nothing and letting, say, I don't know, China fill that role because they don't give a fuck about human rights or democracy or, not corrupt money, if you will, at the lowest level? Or do you do some of these things to actively counter that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a tough question.
So this is basically, I believe, the dude from Connecticut. He's a senator, I want to say. His name is Chris Murphy, maybe?
Yes,
I'm pretty
that's
sure.
right.
And he said basically that verbatim. He was like, this sort of dissolution and pause. Because right now, again, from my understanding, the department's not completely dissolved. It's on a pause for, I think, 90 days, which is what the executive powers allows for, to basically do an audit and see what's going on with the money. He said basically that exact same thing in front of the building as it shut down. He's like, this is a absolute miscarriage of justice, and we need USAID because we need to follow China around the world because they're doing basically the same thing, and we need to, sort of stamp out their power grabs in all these other countries that are, disenfranchised,
Yes.
vulnerable, and we need to be there to, protect them and basically bring them in on our side. And so you hear that and you're like, yeah, that's also a good point. So even justifying the soft power, that's not even necessarily the 8. That's just the soft power part. It's like, yeah, I see that point also.
But it's like the people that are on these arguments, they want everything or nothing. It's like everything else in our politics.
Yeah.
So a guy like that, and I haven't seen all the stuff he said, so I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he's perhaps at least insinuating, justifying all of it, including things that are straight up corrupt, straight up breaches of the rights of like the agencies to make decisions on their own that should be made above them, that kind of thing, like with what the people elected to be put in power to make those decisions. They could take all that side, and then someone else could say, fuck it, get rid of all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Which also, again, like, you probably don't want to, like, there has to be a reason that the CIA, for example, may do some things. Does that mean that I like or support MK Ultra and won't call that out? No, it doesn't. But, like, can I point to things they do that are probably very fucking necessary for the survival of the country I live in and enjoy? Yeah, I can.
Yeah, it's like, to me, saying, is the CIA good or bad?
Yeah.
It's like saying, like, is government good or bad?
It's both.
Is history good or bad? You're like...
the government, we always want to say it's bad. Like, I always want to say that.
Yeah, of course.
And it mostly is, just because it's like a giant institution. But, like, at least when you look at things in individual aspects from pieces of the government, you can find things and be like, all right, to me it's mostly bad, but there's a few good things there. And there's a few... forget the word even good. Like, if you're not comfortable using it at home because you're so pissed about other shit, which I fully understand, say there's a few useful things there. There's a few necessary things there.
We got some nice roads, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The train runs on time mostly, you know what I'm saying? That's kind of cool.
That's kind of cool.
And obviously that's a reduction. But yeah, there's a ton of good things that happen within something like USAID, but it is, again, people want clear narratives. Like, typically when I'm doing explanations on stuff, no one's really happy. Like, it would be so much easier just to, like, take a hard line and be like, USAID is bullshit, it's corrupt, here's why. And you could make that argument completely justified. It'd be so easy to do. But then you could also make the argument like, no, USAID is helping a lot of people. Look at this kid that was starving 2 years ago that now is going to high school. Like, this is obviously good, and this is a result of USAID. You could easily make that argument. And I think with most things, the truth kind of lies in the middle, and it kind of, you have to be acknowledging both sides of the argument, both politically, but also on this issue, like, morally.
Yep.
And make an assessment that's like, yeah, things are good and bad.
It's the post and comment effect, though, of society and social media and what we've done, because the posts that get the most attention are one that take a hardline stance on the other end, and the comments that get the most attention are the ones that fight back against that and say, fuck you, you're a traitor.
Yeah.
Right? And so we have to live in this world where that's what we see publicly, but what we don't see is because I know these people, there are a lot of people who do see nuance in these things. They may lean one way or another or say there's more bad or more good in it, but they're reasonable people who are like, okay, I could see this or that. But they're not the ones, not only are they not the ones who are incentivized to get attention online, because that's not what goes viral, but they also end up being the ones who are the most quiet online because they don't want to get in the middle of this fucking, these crazy people who are fighting over shit.
Mm-hmm.
That happens all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, you see it because, like, you do this job. There are comment sections that will get commandeered by one line of thought.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of people, you'll see, like, the like ratio is really good, and a lot of people will DM you like, hey, by the way, I don't know what the comment section was doing, but that was fucking awesome.
Yeah.
It's just how it is.
Yeah. No, people like certainty. Like, like, especially when you have a limited amount of time. Most people in this country are, you know, raising kids, they're working jobs, they're taking care of their families, they're involved in their local community, and they got their own shit going on. And it's hard to parse every little thing that comes out, specifically in the age of information we're in, where every little story from across the world is coming into your inbox and you have to decipher what is happening. Even if you're getting true facts, you have to decipher, is this good or bad? And it's so much easier just to have someone be like, hey, here's what it is. It's certainly this. And even if that's omitting things, I think people would rather omit things for just the piece of, you know, clarity. And I feel like I'm in a position where I'm kind of seeing both sides to most of these issues that happen politically, where I'm like, yeah, I don't, like, it's not a comfortable place to be. I wish I could just take a hard line and be like, look, I'm saying this, but it just, I don't know, it doesn't feel right just to omit other facts just to kind of make a simple sort of happy narrative. I don't know.
Thank you for watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.